up, everybody? Wes Goldberg here from my hotel room here in Las Vegas. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm about to check out here and then head back to Miami. But before I leave Vegas, I wanted to leave you with some thoughts on Miami's last Summer League game on Sunday and Kel'el Ware's response to Erik Spoelstra challenging him to be more professional. So let's quickly touch on the game itself. Miami lost to Cleveland. They dropped to 1-2 now. Or 0-2 now in Las Vegas Summer League. They lost 92-72, but Kel'el Ware was good. He was a lot better than he's been for all of Summer League. 21 points, 9 rebounds on 8 of 14 shooting overall. Had 3 blocks in this game, and I just thought his level of aggressiveness was far and away beyond what he had been showing before this. And to just go back to what Erik Spoelstra's comments were, challenging him to be more professional every single day, to play with a level of aggression. This Heat coaching staff and Erik Spoelstra were clearly frustrated with how Kel'el Ware was approaching Summer League so far prior to Sunday's game. They, in their view, believe that he should be dominating, right? This is a guy who was starting for you in playoff games. He was good as a rookie. They wanted to see steps going forward, and Kel'el just didn't come out with the level of urgency. He didn't approach it with the level of professionalism that they wanted to. Whether or not he just wasn't taking the Summer League part seriously or not, I think that's what Erik Spoelstra was getting at when he was saying things like, hey, you got to approach everything like you approach every day. Approach every day that you approach everything. Basically saying, look, Summer League, playoff game, NBA Finals, whatever it is, you need to approach everything the way you do anything. You need to approach all of it with a level of urgency and with a level of professionalism. This is your job. It doesn't matter what the context is. And they wanted to see more from him. And that's what they got on Sunday. I thought he was a lot better right out the gate. He was aggressive. He was looking for a shot, but not. And then defensively was better, and rebounding was better. And I think with Kel'el, you can always tell his level of engagement with not just the points necessarily, but the rebounding. Is he fighting? Is he boxing out? Is he trying to go get those rebounds that are out of his reach? Is he fighting for that extra board? Is he doing his homework early in terms of boxing out and stuff like that? So I thought he was really good. He also made some really good in-between plays, getting a block and then running the floor with urgency. He had a nice give and go pass in that game, just reading the floor, making quick decisions. Sometimes with Kel'el, it gets frustrating with him, and I know that the coaching staff can get frustrated with him too, because sometimes he just doesn't look sure of himself out there all the time, and he's slow to make decisions. There was points in Summer League before where he'd get the ball at the top of the key, and he's like, okay, do I dribble? Do I pass it? Do I shoot it? And he just sort of holds the ball for a beat or two too long, and at that point, the whole possession just goes to smokes, and too often he ends up making the wrong decision after that and second guessing himself. But in this game, I thought he was really quick with the decision making, and it wasn't always the right one offensively, but I thought overall it was. And I liked his shot diet. I thought it was a lot more stuff closer to the rim. There was a couple of lob dunks in this game. He had a really nice spin into a dunk earlier in this game where I love seeing that. When he's spinning into the dunk as opposed to spinning away from the basket into a fadeaway, when he's spinning away from the basket into that fadeaway, that's when he gets into trouble. And it looks really pretty and it looks cool, oohs and ahs and all that stuff when it goes in, but it's not an efficient shot. This is a guy who's 7'1". He should be finishing at the rim more often and playing above the rim as much as he can. And I thought he did that in this game. So, again, I thought my favorite play was he catches the ball in the low block on the baseline, gets it, spin move right into a dunk. Urgency, decisive, quick, physical at the rim. That's what they want to see from him. And I thought defensively, again, the 3 blocks, I thought he got caught chasing a few blocks in this game. He did have 4 personal fouls in this one. So it wasn't this wasn't an A+ game from Kel'el Ware. I wouldn't call it that. But the point was that it was definitely a step in the right direction. So we talked with Kel'el after the game, and Ira Winderman did a really nice job with his line of questioning and basically said, look, how did you, and he was asked, when you saw Erik Spoelstra's, what he told us yesterday, what were your thoughts? How did you respond to it? And I thought he said all the right things. I did. I thought he said all the right things. I think he approached it with a level of confidence, and he didn't hide or shy away from the fact that he was called out by his coach. And when Ira asked him, why don't we see this from you every game? Like, why isn't it? Why is it that Erik Spoelstra is saying this has to be an everyday thing and not a sometimes thing? And Kel'el said, "You will." Okay, cool answer. Great soundbite. Prove it. And that's what the Heat coaching staff is going to want to see here. Other quick notes from Summer League from that game. Kasparas Jakucionis was not his best outing. 6 points on 2 of 5 shooting, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal. Missed both of his 3-pointers. Just didn't. I kind of forgot he was out there for a lot of this game. That's not great. Erik Stevenson, who's he's like a 5-year guy. He went to 4 different colleges, but he's been playing really well. He's been in the G League for a couple of years now, but he's been playing really well for this Heat Summer League team. He finished with 10 points and 5 rebounds, 2 or 3 shooting from 3-point range, 4 or 6 overall. His shot is really smooth. I really like his off the dribble game. I got a chance to talk with him a little bit out here in Vegas. I don't know if he's. We'll see. I think that final open 2-way spot is pretty open to competition. I know that there's guys that Miami likes on their Summer League roster. They could always look elsewhere also, but I just thought he was worth a shout out because he did have 10 points in this game. Erik Stevenson did. And then Pelle Larsson, I thought it was another really good game from him. 14 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. Did have the 5 turnovers, but overall, there's turnovers that I don't like and there's turnovers that I do like. Some of them were not great, but I just like the level of doing stuff from Pelle Larsson. He was just all over the place. The turnovers are going to be a part of that sometimes, but I'd rather have the guy trying to make something happen than a guy go out there and you don't really notice him. And with Pelle, you just always notice him. He's always diving on the floor, probably too much. Honestly, he's kind of always on the floor. But I think he is approaching this the way that I think the Heat coaching staff wanted Pelle or wanted Kel'el to approach this. So those are just my quick notes here on Miami's final Summer League game. They do play another game on Monday afternoon. I want to get to a few mailbag questions here that you guys all sent in on Twitter. Dim writes in, has there been any sighting or mention from the Heat on Terry Rozier this summer? Any type of revival would be a welcome boost off the bench, even 12 points on a healthy percentage. Yeah, you know what? I thought it was pretty curious that, first of all, that Spo and none of the coaching staff has ever brought up Terry Rozier. And we had about a 17-minute media session with Erik Spoelstra, and Rozier was never brought up. Now, but to be fair, we didn't ask him. We didn't ask him about Terry Rozier. And maybe it's just that, the fact that we're just not asking, so they're not talking about him. But there are a lot of other things going on with this team right now. That said, I think the Norm Powell trade, one of the things that we're not discussing a whole lot in terms of the Norm Powell trade is just how this impacts Terry Rozier. He's coming in and taking the job that Rozier was supposed to have when they traded for him a couple of years ago. This is what they want. They want a guy who could play next to Tyler Hero and improve Miami's offense. So we'll see. I think for Rozier, it's if he's still on the roster in training camp, how does he look in training camp? What's his approach? Does he look healthier? Is that shot going in? There's definitely a world where he can earn some minutes because beyond Norm and Tyler Hero and Davion Mitchell, I don't know who among the ball handlers and guard types are guaranteed minutes, right? Like Kasparas Jakucionis is a rookie. I don't know that he's guaranteed minutes right away. And guys like Pelle Larsson could play the guard spot, but I wouldn't necessarily call him a ball handler type. So, when you're looking beyond Davion Mitchell, Tyler Hero, and Norm Powell, I do think that there's going to be minutes up for grabs, and I do think that Rozier, if he's still on the roster, will have an opportunity to earn some of those minutes. But he's got to earn them. Another question from the Untrained Eye: which prospects have you seen in Vegas outside of the Heat Summer League roster that you think the Heat should consider for a 2-way? I'd have to give this a little bit more thought in terms of who's really stood out and figure out like who's even available and things like that. But the one guy I was surprised to see land on a Summer League roster was Charles Bassey. He's on the Boston Celtics Summer League roster. Played the last couple of years in San Antonio. Energy big man. Plays hard. Good rebounder. Good decent size at 6'10", 6'11", physical. And I think if Miami's looking for another big, if they're looking for another body at that center spot, which I think they're going to need, Maybe Vlad Golden is the answer there. We'll see if Kel'el starts. Then they might need more depth. Or maybe he doesn't start. Right? Maybe Bam is a starting center. Kel'el comes off the bench, and then they have a backup center, and they don't really need that many bodies. But it still feels like this team is a big body away that they need for depth purposes, even if that player isn't playing every single night. And a guy like Bassey, that to me is the type of hustle big who can come in, give you 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes when somebody's in foul trouble or whatever it might be, and he's just going to come in and do his job and fill in some minutes. So that's a guy that I would look at. But Miami has, they have an open roster spot. They're also above the luxury tax. They have until the end of the regular season to get under the luxury tax. So maybe they go ahead and add somebody there. Or maybe they do think that it's Vlad Golden and they say, you know what, even with the limitations of the two-way contract, we like him. And maybe they start the season with him and figure out where they need to go with that. Another question. Our guys haven't shown a lot of promise to earn a two-way contract. Do you think the Heat will sign somebody from another summer league team? I think they could. Yeah, I wouldn't rule that out. But I also, I don't know that. Look, just because they are not winning the summer league championship like they did last summer, I do think that there's guys that they like on this summer league team that they're going to want to give. They're going to want to give another look to, right? I think a guy like Javonte Cook could be a guy that earns a summer league spot, a two-way spot rather. He didn't have a good game on Sunday. He went over 5 shooting, wasn't great, but overall he's been good and he's got some good size, good athleticism, and I think they like his approach. But there is no guarantee on who gets that two-way spot yet. It's still open for grabs. You got to play well in summer league to go ahead and get it. And to the point of the question, if the scouts are here, right? Adam Simon's here. Everybody's here. Keith Askins was here in Vegas. Like, they have people out here looking at these teams, watching these other games. If somebody else pops that they want to go get, they could definitely do that, and they've done it before. Brian writes in, what do you think of this trade idea from Yahoo? Rozier and a second for Vucevic. I don't hate it, right? Like, you're already kind of paying a guy in Rozier. Even if Vucevic, if you don't look at him as a starter, you're not looking at Rozier as a starter, and you're still paying a ton of money for a guy, therefore, who's coming off the bench. So if you think that Vucevic is a guy who can get, he's on an expiring. I don't love the idea of parting with more draft picks for a guy who's not necessarily going to play a ton, but there's worse trades, right? And if they did that, they would definitely be a little bit deeper, but it would be a little bit of a strange trade. Zach writes in, does this Powell trade make us more of a no man's land team or less? I think it makes them less. Like, what's no man's land? Is no man's land in the play-in tournament? I would argue, yeah. Is no man's land the 5th or 6th seed in the East where you don't have to play in the play-in tournament? I don't think so. I think that's a legit playoff team, right? If you're a top 6 seed, you're one of the best 6 teams in your conference. Is that no man's land? I guess it depends on the definition. But with Powell, I think that the Heat have a legit chance to be one of the top 6 seeds in the Eastern Conference, get in the playoffs, get that week off, and go from there. And they could perhaps be even better depending on how Powell looks. So I think it makes them less of a no man's land team. Troy writes in, with the addition of Powell and the likelihood of keeping Wiggins, is this roster good enough to get out of the play-in? I'm thinking Nico and Ware would need to make drastic improvements for us to get a top 6 seed. Yeah, like I just said, I do think that having Powell, if everybody can stay healthy, I think this team, first of all, I think this team was already better than what it was last year. And I think the Heat coaching staff feels that, I think, and the Heat's front office, I think they feel the same way. I think they think that they are better than what their record was last season. And now that they've gotten away from the Jimmy Butler situation, they're going to have a full training camp, a roster intact, no big lingering questions, a well-deserved break for Erik Spoelstra for the rest of this roster. I think they're going to come back refreshed, motivated, and there is talent. We've talked about this on the show. There's talent on this roster. And then when you add Powell to the mix, I think that bumps Wiggins now to where he's more comfortable as basically a 4th option, right? If it's Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, Bam Adebayo in whatever order, then Wiggins kind of fit into that other more of a 4th scoring role. And every once in a while when Wiggins is feeling it and when he wants to go off for 45 points or whatever, he could do that, and those other guys could step aside and not have to shoulder the scoring burden quite as much on that particular night. But I do think that this team is talented. I don't think that they're talented like the Knicks or the Cavs, but I think they're pretty good. And it is going to come down to the young guys. It's been too. It's for Nico. He's going into his 4th year. For Jaime, he's going into his 3rd year. For Kel'el, going into his 2nd year. the Heat made a decision when they didn't trade for Kevin Durant and didn't pursue Kevin Durant more, that they wanted to lean into the youth movement a little bit. And I know some people, oh, well, you traded for Norm Powell and that's not young. Okay, well, that was a no-brainer. It was Kevin Love and Colin. Sometimes you just don't overthink it, right? Like, you could get a lot better for very little cost. You just do that. You do that, and you also don't know from these young guys who is ready to step up. So you add a guy like Powell, you have Wiggins, you have Tyler, you have Bam. These are guys who could play minutes. These are legitimate, proven rotation guys, high-end rotation guys, all-stars in some cases in the NBA. You need those guys, right? Miami, they're not going to do the full tank, so they're not going to do what the Wizards are doing, what the Nets are doing, what Charlotte, and they're not going to just play all their young guys 30-plus minutes. They're going to make them earn those minutes and earn that playing time. And that goes for Kel'el, it goes for Nico, it goes for Jaime, it goes for Pella, it goes for Jakucionis, it goes for Kashad Johnson, it goes for everybody on this roster. Nobody's guaranteed playing time. And I actually think that I prefer that. I think that it's good to have these young players earn it. I think about the early 2000 Hurricanes all the time in this. Not saying that this Heat roster is stacked like that team, but you would get a 5-star recruit, a blue chip recruit, and he wasn't guaranteed playing time as a freshman. And it didn't matter because he had to go into camp and into practice and earn that playing time. And that kind of competition creates growth and it creates better players. And I think that's what you're seeing right now in Miami. And with Spo challenging Kel'el Ware, he's laying the groundwork. He's letting you know this guy is not guaranteed a starting job. And I wouldn't rule out Bam starting at the 5 and Nico starting at the 4. But also Nico has to come into training camp and prove it and earn it too. So these guys aren't guaranteed playing time, but that means that they're going to have to earn it. And this team, this front office and this coaching staff is letting them know. How do you feel about Jakucionis in the Summer League? Look, I think you're seeing some of the reasons why he slid to 20. There are clearly concerns about his ability to separate. If he's your lead ball handler, I think he can get in trouble if there are guys defending him on the ball, picking him up full court. But this is why he was projected more as an off-ball guy. This is why you saw his NBA comps by scouts and draft experts as guys like Bogdan Bogdanovic and Andrew Nembhard, and guys who are point guard-ish, but not a primary, typical number one ball handling scoring option. And I don't think that's who Jakucionis is. I don't think he's your starting point guard for a good offense. But I think he could be a good part of a good offense. As an off-ball guy, as a guy attacking the second side, working off of more of a primary ball handler or ball handlers in the case of Miami, right, where they don't have necessarily a traditional primary ball handler, but it's sort of by committee. They got a lot of guys who could do a little bit of it, and I think that's Miami's approach, right? They like the idea of every time down the court, maybe it's Tyler, maybe it's Norm Powell, maybe it's Nico, maybe it's Jaime. Bam could do the dribble handoff stuff from the top of the key. Maybe it's Jakucionis. Maybe it's Davion Mitchell. Maybe it's Wiggs, right? They can kind of go in a lot of different directions and run their plays and run their sets through a lot of different guys. And I think that's the idea. I think that's more of a feature than a bug. At least that's how the coaching staff is looking at it right now. And so I think Jakucionis will factor into that. But if you're expecting him to come in and be Miami's point guard of the future or something like that, I think what we've seen in Summer League is that might not be his path in the NBA. But I like when his shot isn't going in. He still plays really hard. I like the intensity defensively. He's trying. He's in the right spots. He's competing on that end. There's going to be some limitations on that end, but overall, he's really competitive. He knows where he needs to be. He's a smart basketball player. I think having guys like that on your roster make you better, typically. Yeah, I think you've seen some of the reasons why he slid, but I think for me, it's been a sobering Summer League for Jakucionis after oh my God, we got this guy who could potentially be in the top 10. He slid all the way to 20. You're seeing why he slid to 20, but at the same time, that's okay. I think he's going to be a good player, but I do think that he's probably picked too late. I think that I think he's going to be better than some players picked in front of him, but I think it's a good fit. And I think we're seeing kind of just more of who he is. All right, that'll do it for me right now. I got to leave and head to the airport, but thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm going to be back either later tonight or tomorrow morning with my co-host David Ramil for a full episode of Locked On Heat, where I'll get his thoughts on Summer League. I'll get more of my thoughts on Summer League, and we'll talk a little bit about the game tonight. So thanks so much again for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, comment, let me know what you think about Miami Summer League so far, what you think about Erik Spoelstra's comments about Kel'el Ware and all these things. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcast app. And thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day.